Picture this. It's 73 BC. You're trapped in a narrow kitchen in Capua, and the air is thick with smoke, sizzling fat, and pure panic. You're a gladiator, built for the arena, but right now you're unarmed. You can hear the guards rushing in. The escape plan is blown. Someone talked. And you've got seconds before you're put down like an animal. But you don't freeze. You reach straight into the fire and yank out a red-hot iron spit, the kind used to roast meat. Beside you, another man grabs a heavy cleaver meant for chopping bone. No polished helmets, no epic speeches, just kitchen tools, desperation, and men who know they're about to die. This is how the Spartacus slave revolt actually begins. Not in a stadium, not with banners and slow-motion hero shots. It starts in a grease-stained hallway with cooking knives and terror. And somehow, from this ugly little kitchen brawl, a war explodes. One that will come shockingly close to ripping the Roman Republic apart. And before we jump into the blood and the snow, if you want the gritty reality behind legends like this, hit like and subscribe. It helps these stories find more people. And drop a comment. Which historical figure do you think is the most misunderstood? Because Spartacus, he's near the top of the list. At the school of Lentulus Batiatus, the conspiracy was never meant to be a war. It was supposed to be a prison break. About 200 men planning to slip away into the night. But in a place like that, where hunger makes men paranoid and cruelty is the daily language, silence doesn't last. A traitor whispers the plan to the masters. The response is instant. Guards flood the barracks. The armory is locked down. Exits are sealed. The conspirators are staring at a simple choice. Wait to be executed, or fight with whatever they can get their hands on. 70 men move first. They surge for the kitchen, bypassing the armory entirely, because steel is steel, and survival doesn't care where the weapon comes from. Roasting spits become spears. Cleavers become axes. Small knives meant for peeling onions become tools for cutting throats. The fighting is brutal and cramped. Close quarters violence, metal on bone, bodies slamming into walls, screams swallowed by the chaos. The guards have armor, training, organization. The gladiators have numbers, and the wild fury of men with nothing left to lose. They overwhelm the soldiers and burst out of the ludus, spilling into the streets of Capua like a nightmare. Citizens see blood-soaked giants sprint past storefronts, barefoot, half-naked, armed with anything they stole from the kitchen. They don't stop to loot. They don't stop to beg. They run. At the city gates, fortune finally tilts in their favor. They collide with a wagon train transporting real gladiatorial weapons, tridents, nets, short swords, crates meant for some future show. The fugitives seize everything. Now they're armed for real. They smash the local militia, break into the countryside, and vanish into the hills. And here is where Spartacus, because yes, he's already emerging as the man everyone listens to, makes a decision that tells you exactly what kind of threat he's about to become. Once they defeat their first proper Roman soldiers, Spartacus orders the men to abandon the gladiator gear. No nets, no tridents, no showman weapons. He wants the gladius and the scutum, the sword and shield of the legion. He isn't building a troupe of arena entertainers. He's building an army. They retreat to the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. The volcano is dormant, jagged, overgrown, a natural fortress wrapped in wild vines. From up there, they can watch the world below, and for a moment, they can breathe. Rome, of course, is arrogant. The Senate dismisses it as a tumultus, a minor disturbance. They don't send a consul. They don't send a real commander. They send a praetor named Claudius Glaber with a hastily gathered force, maybe 3,000 militia. Glaber marches to Vesuvius, looks up at the slaves on the summit, and smiles. Because there's only one path up, one path down, so he doesn't attack. He sets camp at the base of the trail and blocks the exit. He's thinking, why risk Roman lives? Let hunger do the work. Starvation will force them to surrender. Up on the ridge, the situation collapses fast. Food is gone. Water is tight. The way down is sealed by armed men. Spartacus walks the perimeter, studying the mountain like it's a problem to be solved. And then he sees the impossible route, a sheer cliff almost vertical. Glaber leaves it unguarded because no sane person would try it. Spartacus doesn't care about sane. He points to the thick vines crawling along the crater's edge. His men cut them down, twist them, braid them into rope ladders, crude but strong. As night falls, the wind picks up, swallowing sound, hiding movement. One by one, they slide over the edge, men dangling in darkness, hands shredding, muscles screaming, thousands of feet above jagged rock. But they keep going, descending like ghosts into the black. And down below, Glaber sleeps. His sentries are watching the main trail, convinced the slaves are trapped. The sun isn't even up when the screaming starts. The slaves hit the Roman camp from behind, and they don't fight like gladiators. They fight like wolves. Half-awake militia stumble out of tents and die before they understand what's happening. The camp collapses in minutes. It's not a battle. It's a slaughter. When dawn breaks, Spartacus stands in the wreckage wearing a Roman officer's cloak, gripping a Roman officer's sword. The kitchen knives are long gone. The revolt has survived its birth. But victory creates its own problem. Success attracts attention, and attention attracts people. After Vesuvius, the trickle of runaways becomes a flood. Slaves pour in from vineyards, mines, and vast estates across the south. Gauls, Germans, Thracians, Syrians, languages mixing, grudges stacking, hunger and hope driving them forward. By winter, Spartacus isn't leading 70 gladiators anymore. He's commanding a mass of nearly 70,000 souls, and a migration like that can't fight legions. Not yet. Most of these people are shepherds and field hands. They know how to shear sheep, not how to hold a shield line when Roman heavy infantry comes crashing in. Spartacus understands the math. If a real Roman army catches them in open battle, they'll be butchered. So the winter of 73 BC becomes something else, a season of relentless, impossible industry. The camp turns into an open-air factory. Spartacus forbids hoarding gold and silver. He doesn't want shiny things. He wants iron. They raid prisons and melt down fetters to forge blades. They cut timber for spear shafts. They strip cattle hides for shields. And every day, he drills them. Formation, discipline, movement as one body. He takes chaos and hammers it into something that looks terrifyingly familiar. A mirror image of a Roman legion, built from the people Rome tried to crush. But as the army grows, tension spreads through its heart. Because this war isn't led by one man, it's led by captains, and the rift between them is widening. Spartacus is pragmatic. He looks north and sees the only real exit, the Alps. Cross them, disperse, vanish back into homelands in Gaul and Thrace. Freedom through escape. But Crixus, the Gaul, massive, charismatic, hungry for more, looks at the wealthy towns of southern Italy and sees a different kind of freedom. Why run when they're winning? Why freeze in the mountains to return to poverty when Italy is rich and bleeding? Crixus wants conquest. He wants plunder. He wants Rome to feel pain. The army becomes a two-headed beast, one head staring at the mountains, the other sniffing the scent of gold. And Rome, stung by humiliation, tries again. They send Publius Varinius, expecting to crush a disorganized rabble. Instead, he finds ghosts. Spartacus fights a war of movement Varinius can't understand. The slave army strikes and vanishes, ambushing foragers, cutting supply lines, turning Roman discipline into Roman frustration. In one humiliating moment, Varinius barely escapes while bathing, leaving behind his horse, his lictors, and the fasces, the bundle of rods and axe that symbolizes the legal authority of Rome. Imagine the Senate hearing that. A runaway slave carrying the fasces like a trophy, a deliberate insult, a message that says, "I am the law." Varinius tries to trap them. He blocks a valley. He watches slave campfires burn all night. He hears trumpets at regular intervals. He waits for dawn, convinced he's finally cornered them. Morning comes. The charge begins. And Varinius storms an empty camp. The guards are corpses lashed to stakes, dressed in armor to fool him from a distance. The trumpets were a single man left behind to keep the illusion alive. While Varinius stared at firelight, tens of thousands slipped away through an unguarded flank. Men, women, children, silent as smoke. Varinius is disgraced. Southern Italy is suddenly wide open, and the rebels spend the winter feasting on the spoils of places like Metapontum, living like kings in the land that once owned them. But in the spring of 72 BC, the wind changes. The Senate stops calling this a disturbance and starts calling it what it is: a war. They mobilize consuls. They unleash real legions. 20,000 professional killers march south. Spartacus knows the raiding season is over. He orders the march north toward the Alps, toward home. But Crixus doesn't move. He stands his ground with 30,000 men loyal to him, mostly Gauls and Germans, men who refuse to leave the richest hunting ground they've ever tasted. The split becomes final. Spartacus marches north with the main body. Crixus breaks away toward Mount Garganus, and by doing that, he places himself exactly where Rome wants him, on the anvil. Because the legions aren't Varinius, they aren't Glaber, they are a hammer. And at dawn, they come down on Crixus like iron from the sky. Crixus camps near Mount Garganus, overlooking the Adriatic. He's riding the high of victory. In his mind, Rome is soft, Rome is scared, Rome is ripe. But he forgets the oldest rule of war: never underestimate the empire that conquered the world. The consul Gellius Publicola isn't a nervous militia commander. He's a methodical butcher. He tracks Crixus fast, terrifyingly fast, and he doesn't negotiate. He doesn't wait for neat battle lines. He strikes at dawn. The legions slam into the rebel camp like a tidal wave of shields and steel. The Gauls and Germans fight like berserkers, and for a moment, it's pure animal violence. Screams, blood, men hacking at each other in the mud. But bravery doesn't beat discipline. Roman shields lock. The wall grinds forward step by step, crushing everything in front of it. It becomes a slaughterhouse. Crixus fights in the center, cutting down legionaries, refusing to yield. Some accounts say he killed a dozen Romans before a lance finally punched through him. The wolf of the rebellion drops. 2/3 of his 30,000 are butchered where they stand. The survivors scatter into the woods, hunted like sport. Publicola sends a message to his fellow consul, Lentulus. One head has been cut off, now for the other. And that's exactly what Rome tries next, a classic pincer. Lentulus marches north to block the road to the Alps. Publicola comes up from the south, chasing Spartacus from behind. Hammer and anvil. Spartacus is supposed to be the metal caught between them. Then Spartacus receives the news. Crixus is dead, and he doesn't rage. He doesn't collapse. Not yet. He calculates. If the two Roman armies link up, it's over. So Spartacus does the unthinkable. Instead of digging in or running sideways, he accelerates straight at Lentulus. He attacks the blocking force head-on before the chasing force can arrive. The slave army hits Lentulus like a freight train. This is where Spartacus's winter discipline pays off. His heavy infantry, the shepherds and field hands he drilled into formation, smash into Roman ranks with terrifying coordination. Lentulus expected a desperate rabble. He gets an aggressive, organized assault. The Roman center buckles, then breaks. The baggage train is taken. Standards captured. The anvil is shattered. And Spartacus doesn't even pause to breathe. Because Publicola is still coming, thinking he's chasing a fleeing enemy. Spartacus spins the entire army around and marches back the way he came, straight into the face of the second consul. Publicola is caught completely off guard. He expects Spartacus trapped against Lentulus. Instead, he finds Lentulus gone and Spartacus charging. The psychological shock hits like a punch to the throat. Publicola's victors of Garganus, men who just tasted triumph, are suddenly routed. Publicola flees. In a matter of days, a runaway slave has dismantled both consular armies of Rome. The Republic is stunned. And now, the road to the Alps is open. Nothing stands between the rebels and freedom. They could simply walk home, but Spartacus stops. Something has shifted. Maybe it's the taste of total victory. Maybe it's the fury over Crixus. Maybe it's looking at the captured Romans, centurions, tribunes, proud citizens, and realizing that leaving quietly isn't enough. Maybe he wants to carve a message into the Roman mind so deep it never fades. He orders the march to halt. He gathers 300 Roman prisoners, and he doesn't execute them. That would be too quick, too clean. Instead, Spartacus points to the captured Roman armor piled high. He looks at his men, the former gladiators forced to kill for Roman entertainment, and then he looks back at the trembling prisoners. He orders the Romans to arm themselves. A circle is drawn in the dirt. The slaves sit down around it. Spartacus announces funeral games to honor Crixus. But the roles are reversed. This time, the masters fight to the death. The slaves are the audience. Imagine you're a Roman soldier. A week ago, you marched under the eagle, convinced the world belonged to you. Now you're in the mud, cold and shaking, gripping a gladius that suddenly feels too heavy. There's no marble arena, just a crude ring of stakes. And surrounding you are thousands of people you once treated like farm tools. They're screaming, jeering, betting. Across from you stands your opponent. Not some barbarian, your friend, the man you shared bread with, marched beside for years. He's terrified too. A slave captain raises a hand. Silence falls, then a nod. You understand immediately. Fight or die another way. So you raise your sword, and you attack the man you love like a brother. That is the reality of Spartacus's funeral games. It isn't just execution, it's psychological warfare. Spartacus is holding up a mirror to Rome and saying, "Look, this is what you turned human beings into. Now feel it." When word reaches the capital, it hits like poison. Rome's moral hierarchy, Romans as masters, everyone else as beasts, fractures in public. The idea that slaves could force Romans into gladiator slaughter, that shatters something sacred. But Spartacus doesn't linger. He burns equipment to lighten the load. slaughters pack animals, drives the army north again, hard, urgent, relentless. They reach Cisalpine Gaul, northern Italy. Only one obstacle remains before the Alps. The governor, Gaius Cassius Longinus, with about 10,000 men waiting near Mutina. He thinks he can stop the avalanche. He can't. Spartacus hits him like a storm. The battle is barely a contest. The slave army sweeps Longinus aside as if he's nothing. The governor barely escapes with his life. And then it happens. The moment that has baffled historians for 2,000 years. Spartacus stands at the foot of the Alps. Look at the geography. The mountains are right there. White peaks glittering, beyond them Gaul, Germania, Thrace, free lands. No legions waiting on the far side. The road is open. The war is, in practical terms, won. All they have to do is climb, but they don't. Spartacus gives the order to turn around. Why? That choice becomes the great mystery of the Third Servile War. Did the army refuse to leave? Maybe. Many were rich with plunder now. Italy wasn't a prison anymore. It was a treasure chest. Why go back to hard farming in a cold village when you can live like a king in the south? Or was it Spartacus himself? Did victory poison him? Did he start believing the legend? That maybe he could march on Rome itself? We'll never know what was said in the command tent that night. We only know the consequence. They turn their backs on freedom. They march south, back into the wolf's mouth. In Rome, panic curdles into a hollow silence. The consuls have failed. The governors have failed. The priests have failed. The road to the capital is exposed. The Senate meets in the Temple of Concord, furious and humiliated, demanding someone, anyone, to take command of the war. Normally, ambitious men would fight for that honor. Glory is Rome's currency. But this time, nobody moves, because fighting Spartacus is a trap. If you win, you beat a slave, no glory. If you lose, you become a joke forever. The great names stare at the floor. The silence stretches, heavy, shameful. Then, from the back of the room, a man stands. Not a legendary general, a businessman. The richest landlord in Rome. Owner of silver mines, tenement blocks, private fire brigades. Obscenely wealthy, dangerously ambitious. Marcus Licinius Crassus. He looks around at the terrified Senate and speaks calmly. He doesn't ask Rome to fund legions. He offers to buy them. He will pay for an army out of his own pocket. He offers, in effect, to privatize the war. And the Senate, desperate, agrees. They hand him command. They have no idea they've just unleashed something colder and more calculating than Spartacus has ever been. Crassus doesn't go to temples to pray. He goes straight to recruiters. He's about to teach both slaves and Romans what discipline really means. Because Crassus doesn't fight for honor. He fights for an investment. To him, the Republic isn't just a nation, it's a portfolio. And right now, that portfolio is collapsing because of one Thracian slave. Crassus intends to correct the market. He raises 6 new legions, equips them, pays them, owns them. But he also inherits the remnants of the consular armies Spartacus humiliated. Men who have learned to run. Crassus knows something simple. Before he can defeat Spartacus, he has to defeat cowardice in his own ranks. So he tests them immediately. He sends his lieutenant Mummius with 2 legions to shadow Spartacus. The order is explicit. Do not engage, do not skirmish, just watch. Mummius ignores it. He sees a chance at glory. He attacks Spartacus near Pictonum, and the result is exactly what you'd expect. Spartacus's veterans smash the Roman lines. Mummius flees. Soldiers drop shields and run. They crawl back to Crassus's camp, expecting a lecture. They don't get a lecture. They get decimation. Crassus revives an ancient punishment so brutal that even in 71 BC, it feels like a nightmare myth. He gathers the men who led the retreat, about 500, and divides them into groups of 10. 10 soldiers stand in a circle. Friends, comrades, men who've eaten together, slept side by side. In the center, a helmet filled with 10 stones, 9 white, 1 black. Each man draws. If you draw white, you live. If you draw black, you die. But not by an executioner. You are clubbed to death by the other 9 men in your circle, your friends. The camp goes silent in horror. Wooden clubs smash into flesh. 50 men are beaten into pulp by trembling comrades. When it's over, Crassus walks among the survivors and tells them quietly, simply, "You should fear your general more than you fear the enemy." And it works. The laziness vanishes. Disobedience evaporates. The army becomes one terrified, lethal instrument. Meanwhile, Spartacus is moving south again. Maybe he realizes turning back from the Alps was a mistake. Maybe he knows it's too late to undo. But he has a new plan now. If he can't march home, he'll sail away. He heads for the toe of Italy, toward the port of Rhegium, planning to cross the narrow strait to Sicily. Sicily is a powder keg with a history of slave revolts. Spartacus believes if he lands there, he can ignite the island and create a new kingdom of the free. He strikes a deal with Cilician pirates, the gangsters of the Mediterranean. They promise transport ships. Spartacus pays them in advance, handing over a fortune looted from the countryside. Then he waits on the shore, scanning the horizon for sails. Days pass, then weeks. Nothing. The pirates never come. They took the gold and vanished, laughing all the way into the dark. Or maybe Crassus simply paid them more to stay away. Either way, Spartacus is stranded, sea at his back, Rome's wrath marching toward him, and Crassus is coming. But Crassus doesn't attack. He has learned from everyone else's mistakes. He looks at Spartacus trapped on the peninsula and decides to lock the door. He orders his men to dig, not graves, a trench, 15 feet deep, 15 feet wide. Behind it, a wall of stone and timber fortified with towers. And they don't build it as a small barrier. They build it from sea to sea. 37 miles of fortifications thrown up in record time. One morning, Spartacus wakes up and realizes the peninsula has been cut off. He's not leading an army anymore. He's governing a prison colony. Behind him, water. In front of him, a wall. And inside the camp, the food is running out. Winter is coming. The trap has snapped shut. The trap is perfect. On the peninsula of Rhegium, history slows into a brutal waiting game. Inside the blockade, food disappears. 70,000 mouths strip the land bare. First the cattle go, then the pack animals. Soon men are boiling leather shields, chewing bark, staring at the ground like predators deciding what's still edible. Starvation doesn't scream. It erodes. It drains strength, blurs judgment, and turns fighters into hollow-eyed shadows. Outside the wall, Crassus waits in comfort. His supply lines are open. His men eat well. He inspects the fortifications daily. 15-foot trench, 12-foot wall, palisades bristling with spikes. He's engineered a situation where he doesn't need to risk a single Roman life. All he has to do is wait. Spartacus refuses to die quietly. He launches probing attacks, small groups rushing the defenses, testing for weakness. They're thrown back every time. Roman soldiers mock the starving rebels from the ramparts. The Romans think the war is over. Then the weather changes. A massive winter storm rolls in from the Tyrrhenian Sea. Snow lashes sideways. Wind screams so loud it devours sound. Visibility drops to nothing. For Crassus, it's misery best endured by the fire. For Spartacus, it's a gift. He orders the entire army to move. This isn't a raid, it's an evacuation. Under cover of the storm, they approach a section of the trench. It's too wide to jump, too deep to climb. Spartacus has no engineers, no bridges. So he builds one out of desperation. Wood, rocks, earth, they dump it into the trench. It isn't enough. So they throw in the dead horses, then the prisoners. In the dark frenzy, the ditch fills with mud, snow, timber, and flesh. A grotesque slurry. They stomp it down, pack it tight, literally paving their escape with the debris of their suffering. The first wave scrambles across and scales the wall. The Roman sentries, blinded by snow and deafened by wind, realize too late that the shadows moving toward them are armed men. The alarm goes up, trumpets blaring, but the storm steals the sound. Chaos erupts along the line. It's hand-to-hand combat in a blizzard. Legionaries stab at shapes in the dark. Rebels slip on icy ramparts, dragging Romans down into freezing mud. By the time Crassus mobilizes his main force, the breach is already open. The dam bursts. Tens of thousands pour through, streaming back into open Italy like floodwater. At dawn, the cost becomes clear. Spartacus has escaped, but nearly 12,000 lie dead. The trench is choked with bodies. The snow is red. Crassus stands on the wall, staring at the footprints leading north into Lucania, furious. He had them. The war was in his hands, and it slipped away. Panic gnaws at him. If Spartacus reaches Rome now, the Senate will never forgive him. His investment collapses. His reputation dies. In fear, Crassus makes a mistake. He writes to the Senate and asks for help. He requests Pompey, returning from Spain, Lucullus, coming from Thrace. The moment the letter leaves his hand, he regrets it. Because inviting Pompey means inviting a rival, the golden boy who always arrives late and steals the victory. If Pompey gets Spartacus first, Pompey gets the triumph. Crassus becomes a footnote. Suddenly, the war isn't just about Rome anymore. It's a race. Spartacus, battered but free, marches into the hills of Lucania. His army is starving, exhausted, half-frozen but alive. And once again, unity cracks. Two leaders, Castus and Gannicus, decide they're done running. They command 12,000 Gauls and Germans, men who mistake survival for invincibility. They see rich countryside, not danger. They split off and camp by a Lucanian lake. It's a catastrophic decision. Crassus isn't the patient investor anymore. He's a predator racing the clock. His scouts spot the isolated camp. He attacks without hesitation. It isn't a battle. It's an execution. The legions crash in, pinning the rebels against the water. When Spartacus hears the fighting and rushes back, it's already over. The ground is carpeted with corpses. Roman historians record a chilling detail. Of the 12,000 killed, only 2 were found with wounds on their backs. The rest died facing forward. They were brave. They were dead. Spartacus pulls out the few survivors, but the damage is done. His army is shrinking. Morale is breaking. Then the map closes in. Scouts bring terrifying news. Roman ships off the coast, not pirates. Pompey has landed. From the east, another blow. Lucullus with legions from Thrace. The net is complete. Crassus behind them, Pompey ahead. Lucullus flanking. Spartacus retreats into the mountains near Petelia, hoping to bleed the Romans in rough terrain. But even here, control slips away. The men are exhausted, starving, furious. When Crassus's vanguard presses them, the army stops. They refuse to march further. They draw swords, not against Spartacus, but in defiance. They demand to turn around and fight in the open. No more running, no more hunger. End it now. Spartacus looks at them and sees it. The fatalism of men who know they're doomed. He knows open battle means death. But he also knows he's no longer in command. He's riding a tiger, and he can't get off. He agrees. They march down toward the headwaters of the Silurus River. Crassus is waiting. When he sees the slaves forming for battle, he exhales in relief. No more chasing. No more Pompey stealing glory. The prey has walked into the slaughterhouse. Spartacus prepares for the end. Not for victory, for a good death. The final act doesn't begin with trumpets. It begins with a blade slicing into a horse's neck. Plutarch records it, too specific to be legend. Spartacus's horse is brought forward. The men expect him to mount, to command from above. Instead, he drives his sword into its chest. The animal collapses, blood soaking into dry earth. Spartacus turns to his men and says, loud enough for the front ranks to hear, "If we win, I'll have plenty of horses. If we lose, I'll have no need of this one." No retreat, no escape. He will fight on foot, shoulder to shoulder with the lowest slave. The signal is given. 70,000 voices roar. The final battle of the Third Servile War begins. There's no maneuvering, no clever flanks. It's a brawl. The slaves smash into the Roman shield wall with suicidal force, clawing at scuta, trying to drag shields down so comrades can stab behind them. But Spartacus isn't trying to break the line. He's aiming for the head. He sees Crassus on horseback, surrounded by elite guards, watching from behind the lines. That's the only chance. Spartacus charges. History describes a man possessed, cutting through bodies, ignoring wounds, killing 2 centurions who try to stop him. He gets close enough to see gold on Crassus's armor. Then the numbers swallow him. A spear takes his thigh. He falls to one knee but keeps fighting, shield raised, sword flashing. Roman blades rain down. The Thracian is hacked apart, disappearing under a mound of bodies. With Spartacus gone, the rebellion snaps. The line collapses. The battle becomes a rout. The Silurus runs red with men who dared to dream of home. When the dust settles, Crassus searches the field for his prize. He never finds the body. Spartacus is gone, chopped to pieces, buried under the dead. By denying Rome his corpse, he denies them closure. He becomes a ghost. But for the survivors, there is no legend, only chains. Crassus captures 6,000 rebels. He doesn't sell them. Profit doesn't interest him now. He wants a statement. He orders timber, miles of it, brought to the Appian Way, from Capua to the gates of Rome. 6,000 crosses. Every 100 feet, a hole is dug. A cross is raised. A man is nailed to it. Crucifixion isn't meant to kill quickly. It's designed to keep you alive in agony, breath by breath, choice by choice. Multiply that suffering by 6,000. For miles, the road becomes a forest of dying men. Travelers walk through screams, then silence. The smell of rot clings for days. Crassus forbids burial. Let every slave see the price of freedom. Crassus rides back to Rome expecting glory. Instead, he gets betrayal. While he fought in the south, Pompey slaughtered 5,000 fugitives in the north and wrote to the Senate, "Crassus conquered the gladiators in open battle. I plucked the war up by the roots." Pompey gets the triumph. Crassus gets an ovation. Humiliation burns. That resentment will help tear the Republic apart. Because Spartacus didn't destroy Rome. He forced Rome to create the monsters that would. The crosses rot. The empire hardens. Power concentrates. And centuries later, Spartacus is still remembered. Not because he won, but because he dared. And Rome is dust.